and 2 Samuel in the Wycliffe Bible Commentary, page 276. 2 Gabeline, 1:2:139. 3 Longman and Dillard, page 159. 2024 Edition Drive Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 27. The fortunes of people in response to their response to his will. Many examples of this truth follow in these books. As noted above, Hannah's song serves as one of the bookends that bracket 1 and 2 Samuel. The other song is in 2 Samuel 22, a song of David. They are similar in that they articulate correct perspectives and profound insights concerning God. The song in this chapter came from a humble woman in Israel. The one in 2 Samuel 22 came from the great male monarch in Israel. Together they suggest that a consciousness of Yahweh permeated Israel during this period of its history, though often events during that period tempt the reader to think otherwise. These songs voice the heart of the godly remnant in Israel that followed him faithfully during all its turmoils. The Book of Ruth gives us one glimpse of a part of this remnant during the Judges period. Hannah's song is one of several poems in 1 and 2 Samuel. Others are Samuel's rebuke of Saul, 1 Samuel 15 verses 22 to 23, Samuel's announcement of Agag's death, 1 Samuel 15 verse 33, David's challenge to Goliath, 1 Sam 17:45-47, the victory tribute to David, 1 Samuel 18 verse 7, the Song of the Bow, 2 Sam 1:19-27, David's funeral chant on the death of Abner, 2 Sam 3:33-34, the Song of Nathan, 2 Samuel 7 verses 8-16, David's Song of Victory, 2 Sam 22:2-51, and David's last words, 2 Samuel 23 verses 1-7.1. The contrast between Samuel and Eli's sons, 2:11-36. Samuel's innocence and the godlessness of Eli's sons contrast strongly in this pericope section of text. Samuel would succeed and become a channel of God's blessing. Eli's sons would fail, would become a source of frustration to Eli and the Israelites, and would ultimately perish. The section 2:11-4:1 poignantly illustrates the theme of Hannah's song, as it is epitomized in 2:7b. He brings low and also exalts. For it is under the auspices of God who has determined the ruin of Hophni and Phinehas that Samuel makes his mark, too. The literary design of this portion of 1 Samuel also emphasizes the contrast between Samuel and Eli's sons. The writer wrote about Samuel, then Eli's. 1 C. Sanford C. Yoder, Poetry of the Old Testament, pages 61-62, 67-75. 2 Gordon, page 81. 28 Dr. Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. Sons, then Samuel, then Eli's sons, etc. The effect is to help the reader place them side by side for comparison. Cf. Job 1-2. Samuel Eli's sons. 1:1, 2:10, 2:11-17. 2:18-21, 2:22-36. 3:1, 4:1 a.m., 4:1b, 7:2. 7:3, 12:25. 1. Eli's son's wickedness, 2:11-17. Eli, who was probably past the age of 70, now became the virtual father of Samuel. It is to Eli's credit that he assumed this challenging role at his advanced age. We might wonder at Hannah and Elkanah's wisdom in leaving their young son with a man who had been a failure at rearing his own sons. Perhaps Eli had learned his lesson with his own sons and was better prepared to rear Samuel now. In any case, it was an act of faith for Hannah and Elkanah to leave their boy with Eli. And Eli turned out to be a good father to Samuel. Eli's sons were not only evil in their personal lives, but they flagrantly disregarded the will of God, even as they served as leaders of Israel's worship. They neither knew the Lord, in the sense of paying attention to him, v. 12, nor treated his offerings as special, v. 17, cf. Malachi 1 verses 6-14. The clause, "they did not know the Lord," v. 12, cf 3:7, does not mean that they did not know about the Lord, but that they did not have a relationship with him. Point 2, the writer supported his evaluation of Eli's sons with two instances of their specific practices, verses 13 to 14 and 15 to 16. The law ordered the priests to handle the offerings in particular ways to respect God's holiness, cf Leviticus 3 verses 3 and 5, 7 verse 34, Deuteronomy 18 verse 3. However, Eli's sons served God the way they chose, cf Korah's behavior in Number 16. The law allowed the priests to take for themselves the breast and upper part. 1 Leon J. Wood, Distressing Days of the Judges, page 344. 2 Firth, page 67. 2024, edition Drive Constable's notes on 1 Samuel 29. Of the right rear leg of animals brought as peace offerings, Leviticus 7 verses 30 to 34. But Eli's sons took all that the three-pronged fork brought up when plunged into the remaining meat being boiled for the sacrificial meal, verses 13 to 14. The priests were to burn the best part of the sacrifices on the altar as offerings to God, but Eli's sons demanded for themselves raw meat that was not cooked at all, verses 15 to 16. Meat was luxurious food in Israel's economy, so Eli's sons were living off the fat of the land. They were useless men, v. 12, lit. Sons of Belial, Belial evidently being a synonym for Satan, cf Psalms 18 verse 4, 2 Corinthians 6 verse 15. Point 1, in other words, they were very wicked and worth nothing. Their conduct not only reflects on the low spiritual condition of the nation at this time, but it also discouraged, rather than encouraged, the Israelites from worshiping the Lord at the tabernacle, cf 2:17. They were running one of the first religious rackets. 2. To this day, arrogant assertiveness and self-seeking are temptations to all those in positions of great power in society. 3. Their sin was particularly egregious since they were supposed to be teaching morality and representing the people of God. 2:22-25, cf 2 Chronicles 17 verses 7 to 9. 4. Just as God protected Joseph in Egypt, so he would protect Samuel in Shiloh, and so he can protect our children and grandchildren in this present evil world. 5. 2. Hannah's godly influence on Samuel and its effect. 2:18-21. In the previous paragraphs, two statements about the main characters described them and framed the paragraph. They did not regard the Lord, and they treated the offering of the Lord disrespectfully, verses 12, 17. Likewise, in this one, the writer described Samuel as before the Lord at 1C the New Bible Dictionary, SV Belial by D. F. Payne, pages 138 to 39. 2 McGee, 2:127. 3 Payne, page 18. For Heater, page 120. 5 Wearsby, page 210. 30 Dr. Constable's notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. The beginning and at the end, verses 18-21. Even though he was very young, and his service was probably menial at this time, cf 3:15, Samuel lived sensitively before God. The writer did not stress this sensitive spirit here, he only hinted at it. However, it comes out clearly later, e.g. ch4. In the central part of this section, verses 18-19, the writer documented the support and encouragement to serve the Lord that Samuel received from his parents. The linen ephod was a priestly garment, as was the robe, cf. Exodus 28 verse 31, 2 Samuel 6 verse 14. Point 1, Hannah dressed Samuel like a little priest, showing that she respected this office and wanted her son to grow up valuing it. Similarly, today, sometimes parents buy things for their children that will give them a love for those things and encourage them to pursue interest in them, e.g., a football, a child's cooking set, etc. We need to remember that the boy who goes to a good church or a good school still needs prayer. He may be in a dangerous place. 2. Hannah's obedience resulted in God blessing Elkanah and Hannah even more, verses 20 to 21. Among other blessings, God gave Hannah 5 additional children by overcoming her barrenness and making her fertile. Cf. Exodus 121, Psalms 127 verse 3. Furthermore, Samuel continued to develop in a promising manner. Cf. Luke 2 verses 40 and 52. They, Hannah and Elkanah, gave one child to God and received 5 more without losing the first, just as Abraham gave Isaac and received many offspring without losing Isaac. He, God, gave her, Hannah, back far more than she had given him. God still works in the same way for those who love him and seek to live according to his plan and purpose. 3. Eli's lack of influence on his sons and its effect 2:22-26. The sons of Eli followed the example of Canaanite worship rather than the instruction of the Mosaic law. Ritual prostitution was part of Canaanite. 1 L. Tidwell, the linen ephod, 1 Sam 2:18 and 2 Sam 6:14, Vetus Testamentum 24:4, October 1974 505-7, 2 McGee 2:127, 3 Samira, page 159. 2024 edition Drive Constable's notes on 1 Samuel 31. Worship and Eli's sons seem to have adopted this custom. Point 1. However, the women with whom they slept were evidently not temple prostitutes, but women who performed menial duties in the tabernacle. Cf. Exodus 38 verse 8. The Canaanites made sacred prostitution an important part in their sensuous worship. Hophni and Phinehas apparently, or perhaps, were seeking to bring this aspect of that worship into the holy ceremonies of the tabernacle. 2. Even when their father confronted them with their sin, Eli's sons refused to repent. Frequently, old men demonstrate wisdom, but Eli was not wise enough to restrain the sinful behavior of his sons. Josephus understood Eli's sons' immorality as follows. They were also guilty of impurity with the women that came to worship God at the tabernacle, obliging some to submit to their lust by force, and enticing others by bribes. Nay, the whole course of their lives was no better than tyranny. 3. The women referred to were evidently volunteer helpers in the service of the sanctuary. Cf. Exodus 38 verse 8. Unintentional sin was pardonable under Mosaic law, but high-handed, deliberately rebellious sin was not, particularly ritual prostitution. Cf. Numbers 25 verses 1-5, Deuteronomy 23 verse 17, Amos 2 verses 7-8. The punishment for high-handed sin was death. Numbers 15 verse 30. God initially judged Eli's sons by giving them hard hearts as a result of their sin, before he brought final destruction on them. Cf. Exodus 7 verse 3, Romans 1 verse 24. Earlier in Israel's history, another Phinehas, the godly son of another priest, Eleazar, had executed an Israelite named Zimri and a Moabite woman named Cosbi for practicing sexual immorality in Israel. Number 25. Now this Phinehas, a priest and the son of another priest, Eli, was practicing sexual immorality in the tabernacle. How far the priests had departed from the Lord during the approximately 300 years that separated these incidents. While Eli's sons were growing in disfavor with the Lord and the Israelites, verses 22-25, Samuel was growing in favor with both. V. 26. Cf. Luke 2 verse 52, because he was obeying God. 1 Merrill, 1 Samuel, page 207. 2 Wood, Distressing Days, page 350. 3 Josephus, 5:10:1. 32 Dr. Constable's notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. 4. The Oracle against Eli's house 2:27-36. The rest of the chapter explains why God put Eli's sons to death. V. 25. The specific criticism that the unnamed man of God, a prophet, cf. 9:9-10, directed against Eli and his sons was twofold. They had not appreciated God's grace extended to them in the Exodus deliverance, nor the opportunity to serve him as priests, verses 27-29. It is a serious matter to undervalue the grace of God. God had initiated blessing, but they had not responded appropriately, namely, with gratitude, trust, and obedience. Eli's guilt, v. 29, lay in his failure to rebuke his sons severely for their sin, 3:13, though he did warn them of God's judgment, 2:25. He also enjoyed the fruits of their disobedient worship, 2:13-16. Had Eli grown fat from eating the best portions that his sons extorted from the people, cf. 4:18? Honoring one's own sons more than Yahweh, thus reversing the priority of devotion, and despising the divine commandment go side by side in the lives of sinful men. 1. Many students of this book have identified verse 30 as its key verse because it articulates the principle that the books of Samuel illustrate. Every section of 1 and 2 Samuel demonstrates the truth of the statement. Those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me will be insignificant. God's judgment on Eli and his sons was that he would dishonor them. God had promised that Levi's descendants would serve him forever as priests, namely, as long as Israel existed as a sovereign nation. Exodus 29 verse 9. Number 25:13. Now God revealed that he would cut off Eli's branch of the Levitical family tree. Eli was a descendant of Levi through Levi's son Ithamar. His descendants ceased to function as priests when Solomon dismissed Abiathar as high priest. Abiathar escaped the slaughter of the priests at Nob, 22:17-20, but Solomon defrocked him because he supported Adonijah, 1 Kings 2 verses 27 and 35. 1 Samuel, page 167. 2024, Edition Drive Constable's notes on 1 Samuel 33. The faithful priest God promised to raise up, v. 35, may refer to Samuel, 3:1, 20, 7:9, 9:2-13, or possibly Zadok, cf. 1 Kings 1 verses 7 and 8, 2:26, 27, 35.1. Zadok, a descendant of Levi's son Eleazar, replaced Abiathar as high priest in Solomon's day, 1 Kings 2 verses 26 and 27, 35. The Lord's promise to raise up a coming faithful priest is similar to this promise to raise up a prophet. 1 Davis, page 192. The ancestors of Abiathar and Zadok Aaron Eleazar Ithamar. Ahitub Ichabod Ahitub Zadok Ahijah Abiathar. Hophni Phinehas Eli. Ahimelech. Abishua Phinehas. 34 Dr. Constable's notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. Like Moses, Deuteronomy 18 verse 18. So a succession of priests is probably in view, cf. Acts 3 verse 24.1. The complete fulfillment, however, in whom all came true, see especially 1 Samuel 2 verse 35, can be found only in Christ himself, who indeed was made, and continues to be, God's faithful priest forever. One may see in both Samuel and Zadok partial fulfillments of the prophecy, but only in Christ the complete fulfillment, too. While the heart is the seat of the intellect and will, the soul is the seat of desire and the appetites. 3. The Lord's anointed, referred to in verse 35, was the King of Israel. One of his descendants would be Messiah. Ezekiel 44 verse 15 and 48:11 refer to the continuing ministry of Zadok's descendants when Messiah reigns in his future millennial kingdom. 4 verse 36 evidently continues to describe the fate of Eli's descendants after God deposed Abiathar. 5. Notice the chiastic, crossing, structure of chapter 2, which focuses on Eli's blessing of Samuel's parents. A. The Song of Hannah, concluding with reference to the Lord's anointed, 2:1-10. B. Samuel ministers before the Lord, 2:11. See the sins of Eli's sons, 2:12-17. D. Samuel ministers before the Lord, 2:18-19. E. Eli blesses Samuel's parents, 2:20-21a. D. Samuel grows in the Lord's presence, 2:21b. 1 Firth, page 71. 2 Wood, Distressing Days, page 349. 3 Tsumira, page 171. For C. Ronald L. Rushing, Phinehas Covenant of Peace, Doctor of Theology dissertation, Dallas Theological Seminary, 1988. 5 For another study of verses 27 to 36, see Matashahut Sevat, Studies in the Book of Samuel, Hebrew Union College, Annual 32, 1961-191-216. 2024, Edition Drive Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 35. See The Sins of Eli's Sons, 2:22-25. B. Samuel grows in the Lord's presence, 2:26. The Oracles of the Man of God, concluding with reference to the Lord's anointed, 2:27-36, 1. This section reveals the importance and power of parental influence, though this is not the primary lesson. Eli had placed more importance on his son's personal preferences than he had on God's preferences. He had honored them more than him. V. 29. Consequently, they became worthless men. V. 12. Whom God finally killed prematurely. This is not a text about parenting. One could use Eli's example to illustrate poor parenting if one were preaching from another passage that deals directly with the subject of parenting, such as a proverb. 2. Honoring one's sons above God in the interest of preserving a dynasty, even a good dynasty for the good of the people, was a way to end that dynasty and to cause great trouble for the nation. The sin of Eli would have been a solemn warning to all religious and civic leaders in Israel not to repeat the folly of those good men, and it is still a warning today. 3. Hannah, on the other hand, encouraged her son, Samuel, to value the service of God. Consequently, he developed into a godly man whom God and other people honored and respected. V. 26. Eli's sons despised God and abused other people. Verses 17, 22. Samuel feared God and became a great blessing to other people. This chapter also shows that godly influence can be more powerful than ungodly influence and can overcome many natural obstacles. God enabled Hannah to influence Samuel for good even though she seldom saw him, lived miles from him, and could not prevent the daily wicked influence of Eli's sons over him. Her previous dedication of him to the Lord was 1 Youngblood, page 588. 2 Chisholm, 1 and 2 Samuel, page 19. 3 Brett W. Smith, The Sin of Eli and Its Consequences, Bibliotheca Sacra 170:677, January-March 2013-30. 36 Dr. Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. Undoubtedly a factor in her success. Other important factors were her continuing encouragement to serve God and her prayers for Samuel. God has not blessed with godly offspring all parents who have had the same desires for their children that Hannah did. Children are responsible for their own decisions as they grow up. Ezekiel 18 verses 4 and 20. Some choose to turn away from the Lord. Nevertheless, this story shows what can happen. Children can grow up in an ungodly environment, away from their parents' personal supervision, and still become godly. The influence of a wise and godly parent can overcome many other ungodly influences in a child's life. C. God's first revelation to Samuel 3:1, 4:1 a.m. This chapter records how God's blessing of and through Samuel continued and grew as a result of his faithful commitment to God. This is a revelation of another call to ministry that God extended to his servants the prophets, cf. Exodus 3, ISA 6, J1, Ezek 1, et al. 1. It is also another instance in which God revealed himself to someone audibly in a vision. Point 2. 1. Samuel's call 3:1-18. The Hebrew word used to describe Samuel in verse 1, nar, elsewhere refers to a young teenager, cf. 1733. Therefore, we should probably think of Samuel as a boy in his early teens as we read this section. Josephus wrote that Samuel was 12 years old. Point 3. At this time in Israel's history, i.e., the late Judges period, special revelations from God were rare. These normally came to prophets in visions or dreams, cf. Numbers 12 verse 6, 1 Samuel 28 verse 6. Samuel, who saw clearly, both physically and spiritually, contrasts with Eli, who could not see well either way. V. 2, cf. verses 5, 6, 4:15. The lamp of God, V. 3, is an expression that refers to lampstand in the tabernacle that continued to give light through the night. Cf. Exodus 27:20, 21, 30:8, Leviticus 24 verses 2-4, 2 Chronicles 13 verse 11. The fact that its light had not gone out indicates that God called to Samuel just before dawn. 4 Samuel May. 1 C. John E. Johnson, The Old Testament Offices as Paradigm for Pastoral Identity, Bibliotheca Sacra 152:606, April-June 1995, 182-200. 2 C. Robert K. News, The Dream Theophany of Samuel, its structure in relation to ancient Near Eastern dreams, and its theological significance. 3 Josephus, 5:10:4. For the Nelson, page 456. 2024 edition Drive Constable's notes on 1 Samuel 37. Have been sleeping in the holy place, Heb Hegel, point 1, or he may have been sleeping in the courtyard of the sanctuary. Point 2, Eli evidently slept nearby. V. 5. Samuel's self-discipline in getting up 3 times in response to what he thought was Eli's call was commendable. His selfless, willing obedience qualified him to receive the ministry that God entrusted to him. Cf. Gen. 22:1, 11, Exodus 3 verse 4, Isaiah 6 verse 8, 1 Timothy 1 verse 12. Those are fittest to rule who have learned to obey. 3. Verse 7 does not necessarily mean that Samuel did not then know the Lord at all personally, that he was an unbeliever. Some writers have understood terms such as knew the Lord and did not know the Lord as evidence of salvation or lack of it. Cf. Jeremiah 31 verse 34, John 17 verse 3.4. However, this may be reading too much into the text. Rather, it means that the boy had not yet come to know Yahweh as he was about to know him, having heard his voice speaking directly to him. Cf. 2:12. Such mistakes as these, not recognizing God's voice, we make oftener than we think. God calls to us by his word, and we take it to be only the call of the minister and answer it accordingly. He calls to us by his providences, and we look only at the instruments. 5. Even though Samuel knew God and his will, God had not previously communicated with him directly. Finally, God not only called to Samuel, but also stood by him. V. 10, cf. Genesis 18 verse 22, suggesting the possibility that Samuel could see him, i.e., a theophany. The Lord's repetition of Samuel's name added a note of urgency to his call. Cf. Genesis 22 verse 11, 46 verse 2, Exodus 3 verse 4, Acts 9 verse 4. In verses 11 to 14, God restated for Samuel what the unnamed prophet had told Eli concerning the fate of Eli's house in the near and far future. 2:27-36. The reference to people's ears ringing, v. 11, occurs only here at the beginning of the monarchy and at its end in the Old Testament. 2 Kings 21:12, Jeremiah 19 verse 3. Under the Mosaic law, the penalty for showing contempt. 1 Sumira, page 175. 2 C. Leon J. Wood, The Prophets of Israel, page 157 and 9. 3 Henry, page 286. For Ed G. McGee, 2:130. Zane C. Hodges, The Salvation of Samuel, Grace Evangelical Society News 9:3, May-June 1994 1, 3-4. 5 Henry, page 286. 38 Dr. Constable's notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. For the priesthood, for disobeying parents, and for blasphemy was death. Deuteronomy 17 verse 12, 21 verses 18 to 21, Leviticus 24 verses 11 to 16, 23. This was what Hophni lit. Tadpole and Phinehas lit. Black one would experience. cf. 4:11. The cutting off of Eli's line happened about 130 years later, cf. 1 Kings 2 verse 27-35. The writer may have intended to mark the beginning of Samuel's ministry with his statement that the lad opened the doors of the house of the Lord, v. 15, cf. 1:28b. Point 1. Evidently, they were closed at night. Eli, lit. God is high, realized that God's words to Samuel would have been very significant. He therefore insisted that the lad tell him what God had said. May God do the same to you, and more so, v. 17, is an oath by which the speaker places a curse on someone if that person fails to do what is specified, cf. 1444, 2013, 25:22. Samuel faithfully reported to Eli all that God had revealed to him, v. 18. He was a faithful prophet from the start. He relayed God's message to Eli completely and correctly. Ironically, Samuel's first message as a prophet was an announcement of his mentor's doom. This was the second time Eli had received a prophecy of his family's future, cf. 2:27-36. Thus he knew that the prediction would surely come to pass, cf. Genesis 41 verse 32. To his credit, he accepted God's will submissively, v. 18. 2. Samuel's ministry 3:19-4:1 a.m. These verses summarize Samuel's continuing ministry as a prophet, Nebi, in Israel. Though the Hebrew word Nebi describes Samuel only here, 3:20, and in 2 Chronicles 35 verse 18, the Hebrew word rof, seer, describes the same office and refers to Samuel in 1 Samuel 9 verses 11 and 18-19, 1 Chronicles 9:22, 26:28, and 29:29. When the word prophet appears, it usually emphasizes the proclamation aspect of the prophet's ministry, and when the word seer occurs, the emphasis is usually on his or her ability to perceive messages from the Lord. 1c. J. Gerald Jansen, Samuel opened the doors of the house of Yahweh, 1 Samuel 3.15, Journal for the Study of the Old Testament 26, June 1983-89-96. 2024, Edition Drive Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 39. Genuine prophecy was not primarily concerned with prediction or with working charms. It was related to the reformation of the moral order. 1. Samuel qualified for the privilege of being a prophet of the Lord by his faithful obedience to God's will, as he knew it. God sovereignly chose Samuel for this ministry, but his disobedience could have disqualified him, as the disobedience of Eli and his sons disqualified them, and as King Saul's disobedience disqualified him. The clause, he Yahweh, let none of his Samuel's words fail, fall to the ground, v. 19, is a metaphor taken from archery, cf. Josh 21:45, 23:14, 1 Kings 8 verse 56. The arrow that falls to the ground fails to reach its target. In contrast, all of Samuel's words hit their mark. They were effective because God found him to be a reliable bow that delivered his words. Point 2. The phrase, from Dan to Beersheba, v. 20, was proverbial at this time and described all the land of Canaan that Israel possessed, cf. Judges 20 verse 1, 2 Sam 3:10, 17:11, 24:2, 15, 1 Kings 4 verse 25. Dan stood on the northern border about 150 miles from Israel's southernmost major town, Beersheba. The Lord's word, v. 21, is what Samuel communicated to the people as his prophet. He did this so consistently that Samuel's word amounted to the Lord's word, 4:1 a.m., cf. Jeremiah 1 verses 2 and 4, 11, 13, Hosea 1 verse 1, Mike 1:1. Moses called Abraham, Genesis 20 verse 7, Aaron, Exodus 7 verse 1, and himself, Deuteronomy 34:10, prophets. Samuel became a prophet in a new sense. He was the first of those servants of the Lord who became primarily, not secondarily, as the former prophets had become, God's mouthpieces. Samuel also established a company, or school, of prophets that he trained to serve God in this capacity. He did not, of course, train these men to get revelations from God. God gave new revelations sovereignly. He probably did, however, train his students in the general functions of the prophets that included studying God's word, communicating it effectively, and leading God's people in worship. Schools of the prophets continued through the 10th century BC, cf. 2 Kings 2 verse 3. After that time, we have no record of their existence. Individual prophets ministered throughout the history of Israel. 1 Abram Satcher, A History of the Jews, page 62. 2. For further study of this verse, C.W. T. Clausen, 1 Samuel 3 verse 19, A Case of Context and Semantics, Journal of Northwest Semitic Languages 8, 1981-9. 40 Dr. Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. Though some generations saw none, others some, and others more prophets. The great writing prophets who have given us the prophetic books of the Old Testament began their ministry in the 9th century. Moses and the other writers of the historical books of the Old Testament were also prophets. There were no prophets who gave new revelation from God in Israel between Malachi and our Lord's days, which was a period of about 400 years. It seems plausible to attribute to Samuel the development of the prophetic movement in a formal sense. Certainly, it was always God who raised up the true prophet, but the structure itself had its inception with Samuel and was developed further by Elijah. 1. The literary structure of chapter 3 focuses on the Lord's sentence of destruction on Eli's house. This was very significant for the whole nation of Israel. A. Absence of divine oracles, 3:1. B. Eli's fading powers, 3:2. C. 3 divine calls to Samuel, 3:3-9. D. A divine oracle to Samuel, 3:10-15. C. Eli's request for Samuel's report, 3:16-18. B. Samuel's growing stature, 3:19 a.m. A return of divine oracles, 3:19b, 4:1 a.m. 2. Another writer believed that the chiastic structure of chapter 3 focuses emphasis on Yahweh. A. 1 Samuel's career in the shadow of Eli. V. 1. B1 Eli and Samuel in darkness, verses 2-3. C1 Yahweh breaks through, verses 4-10. 1 Heater, pages 129-30. CF Acts 3 verse 24. 2 Youngblood, page 592. 2024 Edition Drive Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 41. C2 and Speaks, verses 11-14. B2 Samuel and Eli in Light, verses 15-18. A 2 Samuel's career as a prophet, verses 19-21, 1. This chapter also shows that God rewards faithful obedience to his word with further ministry opportunities. Cf. 1 Timothy 1 verse 12. Samuel became the communicator of God's revelations to Israel. He continued to receive revelations from God and to represent God on earth because he remained faithful. He became the most powerful man in Israel, even anointing the nation's first 2 kings. Like Moses, Samuel became an excellent leader of the Israelites. Cf. Jeremiah 15 verse 1. He functioned as judge, priest, and prophet. Yet he glorified the kings he appointed, who were the Lord's anointed servants, above himself. In many respects, he foreshadowed the Lord Jesus Christ. In contrast to Micah, whose idolatry led to the rise of a renegade religious center that competed with the authorized sanctuary at Shiloh, Judges 17, Samuel's godly influence restores Shiloh to its rightful place. 1 Samuel 3 verse 21, 2. Chapters 1-3 prepare us for the rest of 1 and 2 Samuel historically and theologically. They teach us that God responds to the faith of people, even insignificant people. A barren and therefore despised woman became the mother of Israel's most powerful man because she trusted and obeyed God. This was a complete reversal of what one would naturally expect. These chapters also show that God blesses with fertility those who commit to his revealed will contained in his law, but he cuts off those who do not. The birth of Samuel was God's means of dealing with his chosen people. The rest of the narrative deals with a similar theme. The righteous ones who are chosen by God will prosper, while the ones who are chosen by the people and oppose God's rule will be cut off. This is true even of those who oppose God's. 1 Donald Weed, The Structure of 1 Sam. 3. Another View. Biblisch Zeitschrift 30:12, 1986-56. 2 Chisholm. 1 and 2 Samuel, page 3. 42 Dr. Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. Rule, i.e., Eli and his sons, are a part of the covenant community. 1. There are 4 conflicts and reversals of fortune in these chapters. Peninnah and Hannah, ch1, the arrogant and the innocent. 2:1-10, Eli's sons and Samuel. 2:11-36. And Eli's line of priests and Samuel's line of prophets. 3:1, 4:1 a.m. God decides who will prosper and who will perish. The basis of his judgment is his faithfulness to what he has said he will do when people respond to his will. Deuteronomy 28. 2. The history of the Ark of the Covenant. 4:1b, 7:1. Many serious students of 1 Samuel have noted the writer's emphasis on the Ark of the Covenant that begins here in the text. Critical scholars have long argued that 4:1b, 7:1, and 2 Samuel 6 are the only remaining fragments of an older and longer Ark narrative, which was a source document for the writer here. Of the 61 references to the Ark in 1 and 2 Samuel, 36 appear in 1 Sam, 4:1b, 7:2. More recently, some scholars have come to believe that the old Ark narratives were somewhat shorter. Conservative scholars generally believe that the Ark narratives were not necessarily independent documents, but may simply reflect the writer's particular emphasis on the Ark here. Point 2. One writer believed that their purpose was to explain Israel's demand for a king, as well as the reasons for the end of Eli's branch of the Aaronic family. Point 3. This is a very important part of 1 Samuel. It reestablishes the fact that Yahweh is the only real God. He is alive, and he is sovereign. This revelation to Israel should have precluded idolatry and polytheism in the nation, but it did not. This revelation also forms a foundation for responses to God in Israel by Israel's first 2 kings. Saul's response was pagan, but David's was proper. Saul and David's responses were typical of all Israel's kings that followed. 1 John A. Martin, Studies in 1 and 2 Samuel, Bibliotheca Sacra 141:561, January-March 1984, 32. 2 for a discussion of the subject, including a bibliography of books and articles dealing with it. See Youngblood, pages 593-94. 3 Merrill, 1 Samuel, page 208. 2024, Edition Drive Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 43. A. The Capture of the Ark. 4:1b, 22. A new subject comes to the forefront in this section and continues to be a significant motif throughout the rest of Samuel. It is the Ark of the Covenant. The writer drew attention to the Ark in this chapter by mentioning it 7 times, including a notation at the end of each text section. Verses 4, 11, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22. Following the reference to Samuel the prophet in 4:1, the writer did not mention him again until 7:3. The Ark was important in Israel's national life. It symbolized God's presence. It was not a good luck charm, as both the Israelites and the Philistines learned. The Decalogue, 10 Commandments, inside it revealed God's will for Israel, the Decalogue being the essence of the Mosaic covenant. The atoning cover, or mercy seat, AV, on top of the Ark made ongoing fellowship with God possible. Point 1. Thus the Ark was indispensable to the Israelites. It corresponds to the cross in Christian theology as a symbol. The cross is a symbol of the essential revelation of God in the New Covenant, namely, the finished work of Christ, and it is the key to fellowship with God now. Yet some people fail to appreciate its significance and treat it merely as a talisman, like the Israelites sometimes regarded the Ark. The purpose of the story in 1 Sam, 4-6 of the Ark's imprisonment in Philistia and its travels to different Philistine cities, as well as to Beth Shemesh, is to give an historical background for the Philistines' rule over the whole country prior to the emergence of the Israelite state, which could still accentuate Yahweh's supremacy as an unconquerable deity. The story explains how Yahweh finally became superior to his captors, too. The major historical element of continuity in this section is the fate of Eli's sons, 4:9-11. The theological theme of fertility continues to be the primary unifying factor in the narrative. 1AV stands for the Holy Bible, Authorized King James Version. 2G, W. Alstrom, The Travels of the Ark, a religio-political composition, Journal of Near Eastern Studies 43, 1984-143. See also Anthony F. Campbell, Yahweh and the Ark, a case study in narrative, Journal of Biblical Literature 98:1, 1979-31-43. 44 Dr. Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. Outwardly, 1 Samuel 4 is about the Ark. Read carefully. It is about YHWH. 1. The Battle of Aphek 4:1b11. The Philistines, as we have already seen in Judges, were Israel's primary enemy at this time. Most of them lived in southwest Canaan along the Mediterranean seacoast. Samson, too, fought the Philistines, Judges 13:16. Point 2 There are about 150 references to the Philistines in 1 and 2 Samuel. They originally migrated from Greece primarily by way of Crete, Caphtor, cf. Genesis 10 verse 14, Jeremiah 47 verse 4, Amos 9 verse 7. Their major influx into Canaan occurred about 1200 BC, about 100 years before the events recorded in this chapter. However, there were some Philistines in Canaan as early as Abraham's day, Genesis 21 verse 32, et al. 3. At the beginning of the 12th century BC, the coasts of Palestine were inundated by a flood of seafaring peoples from the islands and shores of the northern Mediterranean. The entire coastal plain of Palestine seems to have been occupied by the sea peoples, best known among whom are the Philistines and the Jaikal, who occupied the district between Gaza and Ekron and the coast south of Carmel, respectively. The Philistines brought their own culture with them, but they soon amalgamated with the Canaanites whom they had conquered, and since they possessed the richest tract of land in Palestine, it was not long before they were able to dominate the other sea peoples. 4. The Philistines did not lose their independence until the Assyrians destroyed Samaria in 722 BC and brought Judah under submission. 5. One song, Kwang, Kevin, Kim, The Triumph of Irony in 1 Samuel 4, a story of divine providence, Bibliotheca Sacra 177:705, January-March 2020 55. 2 For a good, brief history of the Philistines, see Edward Hinson, The Philistines and the Old Testament. 3 For further study, see Trude Dothan, The Philistines and Their Material Culture, especially pages 13-16, 21-24, and 289-96. For W. F. Albright, The Archaeology of Palestine, page 113. 5 Merrill, Kingdom of, page 207. 2024, Edition Drive Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 45. Movements of the Ark in 1 Samuel. Shiloh. Israelite territory, Philistine territory. Beth Shemesh, Ekron, Gath, Ashdod, Kiriath Jearim. Aphek Ebenezer. 46 Dr. Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. The town of Aphek, cf 29:1, New Testament Antipatris, Acts 23 verse 31, stood on the border between Philistine and Israelite territory. It was about 11 miles east and a little north of Joppa and modern Tel Aviv. Archaeologists have not yet located Ebenezer, but it was obviously close to Aphek and on Israel's side of the border. It may have been the modern Isbit Sartay about 2 miles east of Aphek on the road to Shiloh. 1. In Israel's first encounter with the Philistines in 1 Samuel, the enemy slew about 4,000 Israelite soldiers, v. 2, and in the second, 30,000 Israelites fell, v. 10. Between these two encounters, the Israelites sent to Shiloh for the ark. The ark had always been the place where God dwelt in a special way among the Israelites. It was for this reason a symbol of Yahweh and his presence. During the long period of the Judges, the Israelites as a whole had adopted an increasingly pagan attitude toward Yahweh. They felt that they could satisfy him with simply formal worship and that they could secure his help with offerings. They were treating the ark the same way they treated God. They believed the ark's presence among them in battle would ensure victory. Hophni and Phinehas, in keeping with their character, had shown little concern for the ark, even permitting the people to enter the Holy of Holies and take the ark out to battle. This was sacrilege of the first order. The Holy of Holies in the tabernacle was not to be entered by anyone except the high priest, in this case, Eli, and this only once a year. And surely the ark was not to be carried about the land and into battle like an idol of the heathen. 2. In church work today, many people are equally as superstitious. They think that God, as it were, is in a box. They say, look at this method. It is a nice little package deal. It is success in a box. This method will solve our problem. So many people are moving in that direction today. My friend, that is not being spiritual. That is being superstitious. 3. One Moshe Kokavi and Aaron Demsky, an Israelite village from the days of the Judges, Biblical Archaeology Review 4:3, 1978-19-21. 2 Wood, Distressing Days, page 353. 3 McGee, 2:132. 2024, Edition Drive Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 47. It is common for those that have estranged themselves from the vitals of religion to discover a great fondness for the rituals and external observances of it. 1. We eventually all learn what Israel discovered in battle against the Philistines. Having the paraphernalia of God and having God are not the same. 2. The paraphernalia that modern believers sometimes rely on in place of God include a crucifix, a picture of Jesus, or a family Bible positioned conspicuously in the home but seldom read. Others base their hope of spiritual success on a spiritually strong spouse, regular church attendance, or even the daily Bible reading. These things, as good as they may be, are no substitute for a vital personal relationship with God. Perhaps the elders of Israel remembered that in Joshua's conquest of Jericho, the ark played a very important and visible part in the victory. Josh 6:2-20. Nevertheless, back then the people trusted in Yahweh, not in the ark as a talisman, good luck charm. And God had ordered them to take the ark into battle. The custom of taking idols into battle so their gods would deliver them was common among ancient warriors. Cf. 2 Samuel 5 verse 21, 1 Chronicles 14 verse 12. Obviously, the Israelites were wrong in thinking that the presence of the ark would guarantee success. The offenses against the ark as pledge of Yahweh's presence appear to be mainly of 2 kinds. 1, a misplaced reliance on the ark, and 2, an irreverent disregard for the ark. 3. The Hebrew word Aleph, translated thousand, V2, can also mean military unit. Military units were of varying sizes, but considerably smaller than 1,000 soldiers. 4 Most English translations have rendered Aleph as thousand. 1 Henry, page 287. 2 Kenneth L. Chafin, 1, 2 Samuel, page 54. 3 Martin H. Woodstra, The Ark of the Covenant from the Conquest to Kingship, page 55. For more information concerning the problem of large numbers in the Old Testament, Cr. E.D. Clark, The Large Numbers of the Old Testament, Journal of Transactions of the Victoria Institute 87, 1955 82-92, and J. W. Wenham, Large Numbers in the Old Testament, Tyndall Bulletin 18, 1967-19-53. 48 Dr. Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. Ancient Near Eastern artists sometimes pictured a king sitting on a throne supported on either side by a cherub, which the artist represented as a winged lion, Sphinx, with a human head. 1 This may have been the image of the Lord of Armies, who is enthroned above the cherubim, that the writer had in mind here. V. 4. Cf. Ezek 1. According to Jewish tradition, the ark resided at Shiloh for 369 years, point to the fact that the people shouted loudly when the ark arrived at Ebenezer from Shiloh, v. 5. Maybe another indication that they were hoping to duplicate the victory at Jericho, cf. Josh 6:20. Likewise, the response of the Philistines when they heard the cry recalls Rahab's revelation of how the Canaanites feared Yahweh, Josh 2:9-11. These allusions to the victory at Jericho contrast the Israelites' present attitude toward God with what it had been at that earlier battle. The Philistines referred to the Israelites as Hebrews v. 6. Hebrew is an ethnic term, probably derived from Eber, who was a descendant of Shem, Noah's son, cf. Genesis 10 verse 21, 14:13, whereas Israelite is a religio-political designation, derived, of course, from the patriarch Israel, formerly Jacob. Point 3. The fact that the Israelites suffered a devastating slaughter, Heb Makkah, v. 10, in this second battle, many times worse than their earlier recent defeat, v. 2, proved that victory did not come from the ark but from the Lord. Defeat was due to sin in the camp, including Hophni and Phinehas' sin, cf. 2:25. Israel had suffered defeat at Ai, about 300 years earlier, for the same reason, sin among the people, Josh 7:11. Trying to duplicate previous spiritual victories by going through the same procedures is no substitute for getting right with God, cf. Judges 16 verse 20, Matt 23:25. God did not record the destruction of the tabernacle at Shiloh, but many scholars assume that the Philistines completely destroyed it after they captured the ark. Point 4. This is probably incorrect, though the town probably did suffer some destruction then. Cf. 1 Chronicles 16 verse 39, 21 verse 29, 2 Chronicles 1 verse 3, J. 1W, F. Albright, What Were the Cherubim? Biblical Archaeologist 1:1, 1938 1-3. 2. Alfred Edersheim, Sketches of Jewish Social Life in the Days of Christ, pages 59-60. 3p. Kyle McCarter Jr., 1 Samuel, page 240. For Ed. G. W. F. Albright, Archaeology and the Religion of Israel, page 104. Wood, Distressing Days, pages 305, 358. Edom, A Survey of Israel's History, page 231. N. 97. S. R. Driver, Notes on the Hebrew Text and the Topography of the Books of Samuel, page 50. Joyce Baldwin, 1 and 2 Samuel, page 71. Sumira, page 195. Charles Pfeiffer and Howard Voss. The Wycliffe Historical Geography of Bible Lands, page 143. 2024, Edition Drive Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 49. 712, 14, 26:6. Point 1. The writer of Chronicles mentioned that the tabernacle still stood in David's day, 1 Chronicles 21 verse 29, and when Solomon began to reign, 2 Chronicles 1 verse 3. The writer of Samuel showed less interest in the tabernacle than in the ark. The Philistines may have destroyed the town of Shiloh, but it revived sufficiently to produce a few worthy citizens in later generations. Cf. 1 Key. 1129. J. 41:5, 2. It is likely that Shiloh was destroyed by the Philistines either after the Battle of Ebenezer, 1 Samuel 7 verses 11-12, or a little later. Jeremiah definitely indicates that Shiloh was desolate in his day. Jeremiah 7 verses 12 and 14, 26:6, 9, about 600 BC. And it is quite likely that this desolation dated from the probable destruction by the Philistines about 1050 BC. Confirmation of the biblical indication of the desolation of Shiloh was found in the excavation by the Danes under Aage Schmidt, 1923 to 1931, which showed that Shiloh was occupied from the 13th to the 11th centuries BC. This is exactly what one would expect, for the Israelites established the ark at Shiloh in the 14th or 13th century, Josh 18:1, and later the site became desolate, probably about 1050 BC, and was still desolate in the days of Jeremiah, as this prophet tells us. 3. The two tabernacles and the ark. Moses' tabernacle at, the ark at, David's tabernacle at. Gilgal, Josh 5:10, 10:15, 43. Gilgal, Josh 6:12. Shiloh, Josh 18:1, 9, 10. Shiloh, Josh 18:10. 1C John Bright, A History of Israel, page 165. 2 Gordon, page 96. 3 Joseph P. Free, Archaeology and Bible History, page 149. 50 Dr. Constable's Notes on 1 Samuel 2024 edition. Bethel, Judges 20:18, 28, 21:1-4. Bethel, Judges 20 verse 27. Shiloh, 1 Samuel 1 verse 3. Shiloh, 1 Samuel 4 verse 3. Ebenezer, 1 Samuel 4 verses 4-5. Ashdod, 1 Samuel 5 verse 1. Gath, 1 Samuel 5 verse 8. Ekron, 1 Samuel 5 verse 10. Beth Shemesh, 1 Sam, 6:12, 14. Kiriath Jearim, 1 Samuel 7 verse 1. Mizpah, 1 Sam, 7:9, 10. Gilgal, 1 Samuel 10 verse 8. 13:8-10. 15:10-15. Nob, 1 Samuel 21 verses 1-9. 22